What if I told you that one of the best lessons learned in game dev was by watching people play arcade games secretly? Or that NBA Live used to have their bugs shipped on floppy disks? Or how one man was able to have that front row seat of No Man's Sky's bumpy start to the game it grew into today? Today we're talking with Adam Boyes. Welcome to Player Driven. Today we are talking with Adam Boyes. He is the founder of Vivrato, and he's got an awesome background. He started at QA at EA. He was at part of Midway. He was with Capcom. He was with Sony. He was the co-CEO at Iron Galaxy, and now Virato. Adam, you have so much cool stuff. I'm excited to talk about the nostalgia. So much cool stuff. You want to say a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for the intro, Greg. Very, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey in my career, 29 years, a very diverse background, starting in quality assurance, making $5 an hour, I think $5.50 an hour when I started in QA tester, but variety of different challenges and games that I've worked on throughout my career. So I'm excited to dig into some of those stories, some of the lessons that I've learned along the way, and talk more about the state of the industry.
Can we speak bluntly about some of the games?
Sure. Yeah. Where
So
do you
your
want to
first
start?
game you worked on was QA on NBA Live '97, I think.
Yes, it was. Yeah, very briefly, and then quickly on to Live 98 PC. I remember my formative time. I remember being NBA Live 98 on
Okay.
PC. Yeah.
So NBA Live didn't always have the best track record. We know 2K came in and kind of wiped the floor and took over NBA for a few years. When you're QAing a game that may have a lot of bugs or isn't polished, like, do you know when you're playing it that something's not clicking here?
You usually do. I mean, at that time, I think NBA Live was the top of the pops, right? NBA 2K hadn't even come out yet. I don't think
Oh
in
yeah, I guess we're that
'98.
early. Nine nine
Yeah, so it
ninety
was
nine would
very,
be
very early.
Dreamcast.
And it was also sort of like just right after the era of 3D polygons, right? The transition from sprites to 3D polys was just underway. So if I look back at footage of those old games, they definitely look like they've aged a bit. Uh, but I remember just the pride of trying to find bugs, and then showing them to developers, and then asking them if they're going to fix them. And it was almost like a quest to find shippable bugs, of bugs that they're like, that's not a big deal, and you're like, what? But it crashes the game, when you simulate it after you create 1,000 characters, and like, no one's going to do that. I was like, what are you talking about? Right. But you do have a sense of, as the game progresses. And back then, by the way, Greg, you got to remember, we didn't even have PCs. So we had PCs to test on, but if you were a console tester at the time, you did not have a PC to log your bugs. So everyone had scratch pads and pencils, and so you had to write down all your bugs manually. And then you booked time at this one terminal on the team to sit down with your 3.5-inch floppy and put it in and write down and type all your bugs in Notepad, and then submit that to your lead, who would then copy and paste it all into the central bug database and would do regression testing of like, oh, search for bugs to see if they've been done before. So a very different era if you think about nowadays, where everyone's got a PC at their station. So imagine a world where you don't even have a work PC at your workplace.
That brings up an interesting story. Technologies evolve and things get better. I know when I was at Keywords, they were introducing new QA tools to make it easier for QA agents to log their things. Like, even if it's just a quick button to pull up Jira with pre-formatted tickets, right? And for the most part, that's good for the industry. We're making things simple. We're automating, and now AI is coming in, and we have people who are embracing it, people who are hating it, people who are on the fence for it. And I'm curious, do you have a feeling about how AI is? Obviously, it's going to help improve certain things in the industry, and it can help hurt other things in the industry. But I'm curious on where your kind of stance is.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so many multifaceted aspects of what AI can and can't do. And I think our industry often sort of takes a theme or a topic and then tries to dictate on how everyone should feel about it. I think AI is very nuanced. And when I think about my olden days job, like, I now have seen tools, Greg, where you could just basically be playing the game while it's auto capturing everything you're doing. And then you could be talking along with the gameplay and saying, okay, bug number one, this is what was happening. And if it's transcribing my input plus the game state, plus saving that clip out, and then uploading that to the side, and then auto sort of like putting that bug in the database, think about how much more effective I could have been as someone finding those bugs. And especially with the developer now, they have the context of, they can look in the code base of see exactly where the state was in the background and the code. And then they can also look at the visuals of the video to see the context. Like, all that stuff never, you'd have to literally go into an engineer's office and try to replicate the bug on the controller in their office. And if you try it for a couple hours and if you couldn't do it properly. But nowadays I think tools will make us more efficient in that way. And I think it's very important for us to designate and talk about the impact of AI on the beneficial side of things, with also understanding that, that was not replacing a job. That was just, my job was slower back then. And now I can do it more effective and efficient. So I could find more bugs and be more scalable. So I kind of feel like AI used the correct way can almost be like our Iron Man suits, right? Where now we can get up and we can be more powerful and we can use tools and technologies and be more quick and efficient with communication. But there's obviously a myriad of things that people are very concerned about when it comes to, Gen AI and replacing jobs. So I think as long as we go on this journey with curiosity, I think that's the important part we should do as an industry.
Yeah, I love the analogy of comparing it to Iron Man. I usually go with Batman here, right? You got simple people that
Sure.
just put on equipment, right? But like,
Yeah.
and I think that's right, right? Like, this is giving you those powers to be more efficient, to be more effective. I think if you're not going to notice that someone might be at the bad end of this, where someone might lose their job. But again, we're almost all at the same playing field right now. We all have access to most of the same tool sets. We have access to the same YouTube videos, right? I think there's a lot of education out there that this is the time when you can be educating yourself. You can be learning how these tools work, and prepare yourself for what is next.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think if we look at other industries where either automation or manufacturing process have gone and sort of accelerated, right? We still have people training as chefs, even though we can go to fast food joints and get food tomorrow, or we can go to the store and buy it all there too. So I think there's a lot of different aspects. We still have bartenders, even though we can buy craft cocktails in a bottle. Yeah, I think there's always this human nature. I think people are always going to be drawn towards things that are handcrafted. Even when we look at furniture, we can manufacture those in big, huge factories, but people want hand carved furniture and stuff like that. So, I think it's important for us to just go in eyes wide open and then check ourselves and each other, to be curious about the journey instead of being too declarative about what the outcome might be.
I think handcrafted furniture is probably one of the better comparison I've heard about this, right? You can automate everything, but there's something when it's original is just wow, you're drawn.
Yeah,
And I think we always talk about human in the loop, and I think that's going to continue to be the most important part of this stuff is have a human in the loop to look at it and say yes or no, right? Because a computer is
absolutely.
a computer, but a human will be able to have that look.
Yeah, and I mean, even right now, I think when people are interacting with it, whether it's helping them, write a report or email, I mean, very few people are just taking it verbatim, right? You're adding flavor, and you're like, that's not how I would have
I
said it,
think
and
you
stuff
might.
like that. So, like, nips and tucks and stuff like that. So, I think as long as we're adding that human touch, I think there's definitely concerns around if it knows how to, hack algorithms and dopamine extraction devices, stuff like that. But we've had psychologists in game design. So we sort of already have been going down that road of like, hey, what is something that's too addictive or too sticky, and making sure that we balance that out with that. We talked before we went live about vacation and touching grass. So life's about balance.
Yeah. All right. Enough about AI and it taking over the world. Let's talk video games because that's why
Let's
we're
do it.
here. You have been part of some of the coolest companies I remember. Let's start at Midway because some of my favorite video game memories are from Midway. So I remember growing up playing Rush. I remember playing Blitz. I remember playing NBA Jam, Mortal Kombat. We're all part of this Midway family. And
He's on fire.
yeah, right. I mean, we
Boom
talk.
shakalaka. I
These are
mean,
games
yeah,
like we talk about on a weekly basis, not even with this podcast, because they're just so memorable. I'm curious, like, what was your role at Midway? How did you get started, and what were the types of games you were working on there?
yeah, it was a cool opportunity. I was working at an external development studio called Next Level Games up in Vancouver, Canada, where I was born and raised in Abbotsford, which is a little bit outside of Vancouver. But we were doing a contract project called NHL Hits Pro for Midway. And so I was a QA manager at the time. And I was starting to dabble at the end of the project with production. I was like, oh, Nigel Franks was this awesome guy who's still in the games industry today, was our producer, and he was teaching me a lot about production and what that's like. And so when the project ended, they didn't have another project for me to go on to, so my contract expired. And so our producer from Chicago called me up and said, hey Adam, would you like to move to Chicago? You can move down here and you can be an associate producer. I was like, that sounds amazing. And then, even as a 20 something year old, trying to understand what a relocation is, when you've only ever lived, in Vancouver. Um, so I got to relocate to Chicago. And when I got there, we were making the sequel, NHL Hits Pro 2. And within my first week, Greg, they canceled our project. So right out the gate, I'm like, I don't know what I'm on. And they're like, hey, you have got a lot of sports experience, because I had worked at EA in QA. And they're like, we're making this game called Slugfest, loaded. And so you're going to be on the baseball game. And I was like, I did a little bit of testing on triple play baseball back at EA. But what was crazy about it is that transition from like EA was a big company, all the big, fancy execs you would see upstairs, because they put QA in the basement, where I was like, oh, look at all the fancy people upstairs. Midway was just like a bunch of different teams. But I remember the first time I caught a glimpse of Mark Turmel, and I was like, that's Mark Turmel. He made Smash TV. He made Robotron. And then you're like, that's George Gomez. He made Spy Hunter. And then you're like, that's Ed Boon. He made Mortal Kombat. And you just see these people around. That's Sal DeVita, and they made sort of Blitz and NBA Jam together. So it was so cool for me, Greg, as like an absolute massive gamer growing up, is just seeing these people walk among us and then being able to interact with them and talk to them. And eventually I moved my way up to, after Slugfest loaded, shipped, I worked then on Blitz the League, which was our unlicensed football game when EA gobbled up the Madden EA license, the NFL license exclusively. We pivoted. We got Lawrence Taylor to be on the cover. But at that point, I was a producer and then senior producer on that project. And then my third project, I was exec producer, which was crazy because then I was peers with some of these people, with guys like George Gomez that I looked up to my whole career. So I just look back and I just spent some time with George Gomez and Ed Boon and Mike Builder and Dave Lang, some of the OGs from Midway. And it was just such a formative time for me. I feel very lucky and blessed that I was there during that time. And I was able to juxtapose my EA training, right? EA was very prim, very proper, very process oriented. And Midway was just sort of like abject chaos. So juxtaposing those two as my first couple of big roles in the games industry was phenomenal. But their attention to detail and specificity and control and frame rates and just the feeling of the controller taught me so much that I took forward in my career.
I want to dig into that feeling. I'm super curious about it, but I want to back up because there's so much cool stuff that you said. So first, I didn't even know Nigel Franks worked at Midway. Nigel and I worked together at Keywords. I think he just took over Snowden Studios. He's
Yeah,
done
he
a
did.
couple of podcasts.
So
And
cool.
he is just such a cool, level-headed. Like after I left Keywords, he came up to me and I saw him at GDC, and he was the friendliest guy in the entire world. And it's so cool how both this world is really a small, tight-knit community, but it also includes so many people, especially these days with new tools coming out, and anyone can create a game. But the statement you made at the end, where kind of the attention to detail, the controls, the precision, right? I think there's this new, and maybe I'm wrong, but when people are making games in Fortnite and Roblox and stuff like this, all this creator economy type of stuff, right? Like I feel like you're losing some of that specialty of what makes a game feel special, right? Like you could play some cool games in UEFN, but at the end of the day, you're playing Fortnite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. That's what I'm thinking about. You're talking about Midway, and you had so many different creators there, right? And they created something special. Is that missing in today's games?
Well, I think we go back to craftsmanship. Imagine a world where what they would do, what George and Ed and Mark would tell me stories of, is they would go to an arcade in Chicago, and they would basically, in the morning before it opened, they would swap out a board with 3 changes, right, with 3 little bug fixes or tweaks, and then they would sit there, unbeknownst to the people playing it, and they would sit there with a notepad and take notes and their feedback. And so what I learned from them was this absolute, just their key details of every single thing from the field. Because you, at the time, the original microtransactions were quarters, right? How do you get that next quarter? What's the right amount of time for a play session? How to get people to feel great about their accomplishments, not too punishing when it's like put in the next quarter. And so their attention to detail of, like, again, what the hands-on controller felt like is critical. Playable build every single day. And to this day, I still sort of mandate that in all the projects that I'm involved in. I want a playable build that we can sort of fire up on a regular basis. We're all playing it together. But the other part, Greg, that I didn't understand or really put a lot of thought into is that dopamine, the feeling of like, how are we going to make people feel great? Like we had this, years long training of Sal and Mark are teaching us, when you earn something in a game, what does the bar look like? When that bar fills, what is the animation that pops? And then how does it fly into the turbo or the on fire or any of that stuff? And so pixel language and feedback loop. And so between the hands-on controller feeling that everything has to feel very fresh, very vibrant, and very present. And I absolutely agree with you that some of these games, I think, that just already have the tool set there, the ability to tweak and perfect all those different parts, because all of them became almost so hyper fixated. And even to this, I remember one time somebody put in, well, back years and years later when MK was on console, and they put in a 1.5 frame, I think, or 2 frame delay. So instead of it running at 60 FPS, it was 58. And Ed was like, "This is not 60." And like, because again, that training of what exactly they feel and how they want to express themselves. So I do agree with you that absolute fascination and determination around every little detail, I don't see that on a lot of teams. It would make games even longer and larger and more expensive, but man, when there were smaller teams and you could just tighten it with that specificity, and it was pretty something magical to watch. I learned so much from all those guys.
Does I learned a while ago about the three C's, right? That's camera, control, character. Does this fall under that kind of subset of game design, or is this something I'm not yet familiar with? I don't even know if there's a concept associated with it.
Yeah, Greg, honestly, I don't even know if they had any names, or
Yeah.
like no one was trying to write a book there. They were just like, this is how you do things. And the meticulousness, at first, it was easy to reject it. At first, you're like, look at these kooks. These guys are just like, they're all over me about this responsiveness or this one animation, or there's an animation glitch or a frame delay within this. And then you realize you're like, oh, because they're masters of their craft. I mean, think about the innovation that Ed Boon's been in charge of for the last 30 plus years. I mean, every time that game gets better and better and better with the same guy in charge. And that's a testament, I think, to his sort of mastery of the craft.
Yeah, it always boggles my mind. I mean, I go back to MK on there was the Genesis and SNES, right?
Yeah,
SNES didn't have blood, and Genesis did have
that's right.
blood, and like you had a simple 2D fighter with like 8 characters or something, and now it's this massive universe. And I feel like a dork, but I don't play Mortal Kombat as much as I did, but I will watch every cutscene on YouTube because it is
Totally.
such a cinematic masterpiece. And it went from just a fighting game to a really bad but awesome movie to like this cinematic marvel where I'm just sitting here. It's like 8 hours of cutscenes. I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? And then I just start the next one because there's such fascinating stories. And this is a whole nother topic, but it shows you how well gaming is doing, getting into the media side of things, of video and stuff like that. Like it's it always boggles my mind with Resident Evil that they don't just tap was it Capcom? I can't
Yeah.
think about it. Like to say, hey, can you make this movie because it's so good in game, and then you get the Resident Evil movies that come out and they're just not great.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how other people interpret it. I think there's been a pretty good track record recently of the adaptation of gaming IPs into Hollywood, and but we were also really bad at adapting IPs into video games, right? I think I remember the first. I mean, aside from if we take the what was it, the Ducktales games, right? Back in there was an era where Capcom did phenomenal
Yeah.
ports of Disney properties. But aside from that, I think in sort of like more modern era, I remember Chronicles of Riddick that was done by Starbreeze was probably like the first, like, holy mackerels, we can actually do this right.
Mhm.
And then of course the Batman series that Rocksteady did a phenomenal job. That was like that brought, I think, IP integration to games to a new level. And now we can't look back because it's like everything, people now approach these things with such care and love and affection that, it comes through.
All right, I'm gonna ask one more question because I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm curious. From EA to Midway, right? EA is known for their sports. You mentioned how Midway was kind of more of a, let's call it an open office, whereas EA was more of a corporate office. Like, did the way they handle sports, did it show you why one was more successful than the other?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I think when we look at it, EA sort of approached the entire thing as a business, and how do we conquer each of the different sort of pillars of the different sports. And when I kind of look at the way Midway approached things, they were punk rock. They were rebels. They were in Chicago. No one really thought Chicago was a game dev scene. And even their approach, I remember there was a game called Red Card Soccer that Midway was doing, and they were so. This is sort of how Midway felt or thought approach things. What they did, Greg, at the start of development, they actually greenlit 2 teams to build prototypes, and then they said whoever's prototype is better will be the team that takes this game to the end, which is like so
Beautiful.
savage.
Yeah.
Imagine a world nowadays where like, hey, it's kill or be killed. Like imagine if it was just every single team was like, we got a 50-50 shot. We got a coin flip at the end. Um, and so I think about that, that scenario, and that sort of was representative of what Midway was wanting to take risks, was hungry for the future. And I think as player tastes change, right at the time, the start of it, right, obviously NBA Jam and NFL Blitz were just transformative in the arcades, and but as people's tastes changed and they wanted more simulation, and Madden was becoming a juggernaut. I think that's also a reason why NBA 2K, coming out of sort of not left field per se. I mean, Visual Concepts is a phenomenal studio, but like they really approach it saying, what's the vibe check of the industry, and how do we transition and take all those fans of Jam and of NBA Live and bring in a whole new world. Now NBA 2K does, I mean, globally. I think it's actually surpassing Madden in a revenue perspective. So they've done a first class job. But I think it's about approach. It's also just EA was becoming a larger juggernaut, and they're figuring out how to run the business versus just more of a scrappy punk rock team in Chicago.
I like the idea of a punk rock team, though. I mean, all their games were arcade style games, right? Which I
Yeah.
think it was fun, right? We needed that, and I always loved the approach, and I never understood what happened. It just kind of faded away into existence. I don't know if it was the death of the arcade that kind of helped kind of transition that. I think Midway was maybe kind of a too spread thin. I don't really know what happened, but those arcade games, I think we're starting to see a comeback of them, right? I mean, we have Rematch that just came out. We have a lot of cool games out there. It's just the Blitz days, man. Those were special.
They were special, and that's actually why what was really what made me really happy as a player and as someone in my career going to Capcom after that was where I got to chase all those things down, because at the time then when I left Midway, Xbox Live Arcade had just launched, PlayStation Network hadn't launched yet, and so it was this whole new era where I got to go through and dig through the hits on Capcom and figure out what we bring to market. So that was an awesome time for me, even though Midway was going through some challenges of like, where do we go from here? Their assets all got sold out to both WB and some other buyers. And so that was kind of a sad ending for all of us, right? We all still keep in touch. I mean, some of the people, even Matt Booty, who was the head of the studio, who became CEO of Midway, is now, head of all kinds of big things over at Microsoft. So he did okay. And so many people that work there also are crushing it in the industry.
Let's talk about Capcom for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There was one game well, first of all, Capcom makes a lot of games that are fantastic, but Dreamcast came out. I remember getting a demo CD, and there was a game Power Stone and Power Stone 2. And most people don't remember Power Stone when I'm talking to them about it. And it's just like it was like this 4 person fight them. You could pick up anything on a level. Like it was wild. And I don't know if it was like Smash Brothers. It's not, because Smash Brothers is 2D, but like Power Stone 2 came out, and then it just never came out again. I'm just like, what happened there? But that's neither here nor there. What were you doing at Capcom?
So Capcom joined as head of production. So we were basically in charge in the US of figuring out Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network. How do we take the amazing, amount of games, the library of content that we have as a platform, and bring it to a new generation? And so I had the absolute amazing job of looking at all the old code and then finding studios that could remaster, remake, and no one had really done that yet, right? You got to think about that era, right? So we're talking about 2000, so it's 2007, and the first project that we greenlit was Street Fighter 2 HD remake, and so that was obviously a big undertaking, because we're going to hand draw every single frame from a game that was like Capcom to me growing up. That was my holy mackerel. Like Mega Man, all of the Mega Man franchise series were phenomenal, and I was buying a Commando, the original one. So so it was such an honor to basically build a team to go and scour the earth for the games and figure out which ones made the most sense. Puzzle Fighter HD Remix, that was a ton of fun as well. But so we were in charge of bringing games back and bringing them back on the digital front. And I think at peak, we had 6 of the top 10 selling games on XBLA and PSN. Not because we created them from scratch. It's more because we were inspired by the incredible games that Capcom had made through the years.
It's the nostalgia factor, especially doing it from the beginning where you are, is ridiculous. There's a guy kind of Colin Neese. I don't know if you've seen him online. He does mind game data, and he talks about, like, for example, NCAA last year came out, right, and you saw this crazy boost in everything because people haven't seen NCAA in 20 years, and now year two, you see that boost just completely get eliminated, right? Like, there's something about that being able to play games from the past, and especially when you talk about the Street Fighters, people grew up on that. People like died playing Street Fighter. So you tap into that nostalgia really well, I think, and especially being that first mover, it's like it gets everyone excited, and I think we're going to see that, and then I think it's going to be worn out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I realized I'd never realized that I had a massive bias. And one of my favorite games in the arcade is a really obscure arcade game that Capcom made called Black Tiger. I was always super fascinated with it. It was what inspired like Rygar and a few other those side-scrolling sort of action games back in the day. But I was hell bent, Greg, on bringing that IP back. And so we did survey after survey, research after research. And it was like 65th place, 63rd place. No one cared, but I really wanted to push it through. I realized though that Puzzle Fighter in 1943 and all these other Bionic Commando, Mega Man, these are the games that people want to bring back. No one wants to see Black Tiger come back. But also, I think we were entering a new era because as we were working on those IPs, we were also in charge of doing business development and finding new projects to greenlight. And so one of the first games we ever greenlit was a game from Certain Affinity. So Max Hoberman had left Bungie. He was the online lead online designer of the Halo series from I think 2 and maybe even 3, and the original. Super brilliant guy. And they had this game called Age of Booty, which is just this fun little hex-based pirate game, sort of like a bit of an RTS, but really simple and straightforward. And we were trying to basically find what's the new next generation of Capcom original games. So that was one of the games we signed. Another one was called Rocketman. And so exploring that, and I remember at the time, because we were getting pitched all kinds of games, I remember seeing Limbo. We're the first people that ever saw Limbo before Microsoft signed it. I remember passing on Minecraft because I was like, I don't get it, So, but these are the things that you start to learn of, like, oh, the game industry is changing and tastes are evolving. And even though I'm old school and I love my, Mega Man, Bionic Commando, and Black Tiger, the players of this next generation want different tastes.
They do, and it kind of goes back to what you were mentioning earlier. It's tapping on that dopamine, and how do you get people to do that? And for better or for worse, we've seen gaming kind of fracture. I think you have these mobile games that are much more akin to a casual audience, that are just pure drips of dopamine, right? And it's not even much gameplay there. It's just more of, it found a way to like trigger that, and you see it generating millions and millions or billions of dollars. It's just like, what is happening here? And then you see great games that are getting buried because they don't have a LiveOps operation service, or it's not online, right? And it's a one-time $30 thing. It's just like, how does the $30 AA game compete with the free-to-play match game that's making billions of dollars?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to stop it, right?
Yeah.
Tastes are changing. If we think about it though, Greg, like, let's go. I love using food analogies because I love cooking. And I remember when I used to travel when I was very young. I remember I went to Dublin when I was in my 20s. And I remember the food being so mediocre. And there was like 4 things to order at these different restaurants. And I remember getting a nacho and salsa, and it was like just a bowl of ketchup, right? And you look at now Dublin now, and there's Thai restaurants, and there's Indian restaurants, and there's American cuisine, there's Mexican, like, it has everything. And so you think about the proliferation of different food types everywhere in the world now. Like, I remember growing up and being like, sushi's gross, it's raw fish. Now I'm like, I can't get enough sushi. I think games are the same. When we grew up, we were fed X amount of consoles. We had either the NES, or when we do SNES versus Genesis, and even back to Commodore. Are you doing Amiga? Are you doing Atari? Are you doing Coleco? Are you doing Intellivision? And so over time now we have infinite choices, and with infinite choices become almost like, not totally infinite, but close to infinite genres and creators and ideas. And so the vast sort of release mechanism and speed in which games are coming to market, it's very difficult. So before we were able to sort of be a little bit predictive of like what's going to hit, and now it's more I don't want to say random, because I think it's a time and a place. It's like when people say, hey, it's not just 3 things went right, it's 50 things went right. So trying to replicate that, I think oftentimes we'll see a successful game and then we'll be like, let's just do that again. I was like, no, it was about the humidity, the time of the week. It was about the, what this social world was like, what culture was like, the, global, ecosystem. And that's why it was successful. So I think oftentimes it's difficult for us to approach it and crack the nut and figure out the algorithm. But I want people to keep making cool new things. I think that's been the heart and soul of the games industry from the beginning. So as long as we focus on that, I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah, and again, I think with these tools like Unity and Unreal being so accessible to people these days, right? Like you could get a great online tutorial on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, right? I've learned that these are great mediums to educate people and in a short form video, and it's a really cool place to go. And I want to come back to kind of all the gaming stuff you've been doing, but I want to understand a little more about the vision behind Vivrato. I know you're launching Vivrato 2.0, you're calling it, right? But you have so much industry experience from so many different cool people, and I'm curious on how that all translates into what Vivrato is doing and how you're trying to share that best practices with others in the industry.
Yeah, it's a great question. What I realize is that the change happening in the industry is sort of cataclysmic. I don't think it's ever changed as much as it's changing right now. And so the more people that I started to ask, what do they think the number one problem is, the different answers that I got. And that was kind of a shocking thing to me of how are we not identifying what the key issues are and trying to tackle them. So with that, I realized that we often rely on outside of the industry advice from big sort of consultancies. So I had this idea, and over the past 7 months since I began, I've been scouring the earth and talking to hundreds of people all throughout the industry and trying to find other like-minded individuals. And so we're super excited because I've brought on 9 other team members that are going to help us tackle these problems. There's a lot of areas that I have a ton of experience in. There's a lot of areas that I don't. And realize that in order for us to impact change and help these big companies, publishers, platforms, investors tackle the problems that they're facing, we need a very diverse sort of mindset and superhero suite, right? So that's what we've been doing with finding these people, and being able to be all operator centric, right? So everyone's shipped things, done things, launched platforms. That's critically important because then you understand the context of it. It's like imagine somebody telling you how to play a game that they've never played before, or that they've never even played a game or picked up a controller, right? We should be giving and getting advice from people that have done it before as well. Not because I think we're going to repeat ourselves, right? But the industry is cyclical. So what Vivrato's mission is to help drive this industry with the heart and soul in mind to a more stable future where we have longevity sort of top of mind with the future of the games industry.
What are the size studios that you're typically approaching, and how do these studios I'm going to take a look at myself here, right? I don't know
Sure.
how to ask for help or when to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people like that. They're just either gun shy or they're afraid to say, hey, I need some help. Like, how does a studio know they're in a place where, like, you know what? Help would help me right now.
I think, Greg, it's a human nature thing. Most people don't know how to ask for help or when to
Mhm.
ask for help. And oftentimes, I think when you do, you feel emasculated. You feel like, what am I doing? I'm not good enough. The reality of it is, no one knows what we're doing. None of us
Yeah.
know exactly what we're doing, right? Life is just a big sort of game of street theater and improv. And so we're figuring it out as we go. So I think that's a fantastic question because it's exactly the nut that I've been trying to crack of like, how do you go to a studio and say, we can help, but they need to be ready to be helped. And so we've been exploring, and we're excited to talk more down the road about like creating products or basically going in and being able to do review of their business and a check-in with them of like, oh, here's some opportunities, here's some advice we would give you, and then they can take that and go on their way to sort of build the future. Or if they want more coaching and mentoring and stuff like that, that's an option too. But the first thing is really looking back. And the question that I love opening a lot of my conversations with the studios is what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? When you started the studio, you had an idea. You wanted to make a game, or you wanted to do co-development, or you want to make a, RPG, whatever it is. But, how do you make them think deeper about the long term? Do you want to do this for your whole life? Do you want to do is there another career in the future? Do you want to transition to other jobs or opportunities? So it's about helping guide them. But you hit the nail on the head, Greg. It's very difficult for people to ask for help if they don't know. So I think just giving opportunities, whether it's signing up, on LinkedIn, you can go up and sort of just sign up for 15 minutes to chat with me, just to sort of pick at what the problem set is. But I love that question because that's what I love. My favorite part of it, of the job is to working with studios and helping them find what that hairy audacious goal is.
Yeah, it's that sales engineer side of me. It's discovery questions, right? You kind of
Yeah.
ask these questions to lead out of them what their issues are. And they may not even know what their issues are, but when you start to talk it out, it's like, oh, no shit. And then in hindsight, it's like, how did I not see that before, right? It's I've learned as being this solo person now is that when you have the ability to bounce ideas off people, right? You can shape it better, right? It's one thing when it's my idea, but when it's other people's ideas, then you can build what's theirs and be like, hey, now I can give you this, or I can sell you this. We can do this for you. And I think it's the coolest thing you have the ability to do, especially when you have that industry experience, right? It's one thing when you're like, oh, you know what? I've used ChatGPT and I'm a pro at this now. I can figure this out. Where you know what? I built these games. I know what it's like. I know the pros. I know the cons. It's the difference between reading a textbook and thinking you're an expert versus actually having that experience and doing it, right? Who do you want
Yeah.
operating on you? Some guy that never operated but is an expert at books, or some guy that has?
Yeah, some person on the internet that read a bunch of articles. It's
Yeah.
a great point. I think it's kind of why, and one of the reasons I think that a lot of studios don't ask for help is because if you go back to the origin of the industry, it was hyper competitive,
Mhm.
right? Every studio that was starting had secrets. You can't see our code. I can't tell you what we're doing. The console wars. It was me versus the world. It was bare knuckle boxing in the streets. And what I've realized now is that the future is together. If we don't help one another out, if we're not sort of supporting one another, it's why our motto is it takes a village, because it's going to be about us helping each other. And a lot of people, especially when they're in pain or when they're facing challenges, they don't know what to do. And so if there's a place that they can turn to, right, I think that's important. Doing the fire prevention, so hopefully it never gets to a bad place. But that's really what we're trying to build here, is a place that for safety, security, knowledge sharing, so that way we can sort of equip the future generation into being able to persevere, more successfully.
Have you seen any common themes around struggles that studios have been facing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even from the questionnaire that I sent out, that we made this deck of cards, which is the biggest challenges of the games industry. So there's 52 different challenges. The big things I'm seeing right now, Greg, obviously funding sources, publishing platforms and investors are all spending less right now on new games and new concepts. People bringing their product to market. Do I sign with a publisher? Do I give a back end share? There's also discoverability. How do I get my game found? Oh, I didn't start building my community until too late. So by the way, there's dozens and dozens more, but those are some of the ones that I find the most that people discussing.
This is a tangent question, right?
Yeah.
Most of the times when I hear about problems in the industry, it's related to that. It's about marketing struggles. It's about community. Do I start doing this now? It's about trust and safety. Like, how can we never talk about the engineering or coding side of things when there's struggles in the game, right? Everyone always points to the community side of things, but what about the building of the game?
Well, because it's not very sexy, right? It's same question, Craig. Greg, people have asked me for years of, hey, why isn't there a reality show about making games? I was like, because most of it's like talking about where the code's going to be or what features going to be, or like it's just not. I mean, it can be dramatic, but it is at the end of the day, you're sort of building widgets. I think finding the fun is the challenging part of any game development cycle. And the other part of it, it's kind of also why oftentimes our headlines don't talk about the contributing factors, and the headlines often don't talk about the solutions that we can pursue. We want that clickbait, right? We want that big, like, did you know? Gotcha, haha, this failed, this went under. That's what we're sort of drawn towards, because that's where human nature is like, oh, I'm curious what's going on with the drama between that publisher breaking up with that developer. And you're like, it's not really any of our business, even though it's exciting and it's interesting. But you're right. I wish we spent as an industry more time. But it also goes to like the relationship between the player and the developer. I think that's also fractured over time. I think players have opinions, right? And they can give their opinions on the regular. I think developers oftentimes take players for granted. And I think that relationship, it can be a little bit sort of delicate at times. But I think all of it is as long as we're all doing it good conscience, and we're trying to do better and evolve, and as not only that relationship but the industry, I think we'll be in a better place.
Well, let's take a use case and kind of see if we can talk this out because it's
Sure.
my favorite use case in gaming and you have hands on experience with it. We're going to talk about No Man's Sky. You were at Sony. I think
Yeah.
you can talk about what your part was with No Man's Sky, but it was hyped beyond belief. It did not launch with hitting any much of that hype at all. but the game kept going. It was a little train that could, and it kept building, and it delivered on probably every one of those promises that it made, and then some. And it is a thriving game, and it is mind blowing knowing it came from. It's basically the phoenix, right? It came back from the ashes and rose, and I just love the story of the game because it's a true game developer that built it and loved it and wanted to build what's right for gamers. So, can you kind of you have again a much better viewpoint of No Man's Sky. Can you tell me how that all happened at Sony?
Sure. I mean, it started with, we were always looking for great independent studios to work with over the years. I remember my first time on stage at E3, I got to announce the Indy 9, right, where we had incredible people on stage. Tribute Games is on stage. We had Lauren Lanning on stage. We had Philippe from Outlast, from Red Barrels. That was such a cool moment. And we knew that we wanted to have sort of iconic independent development teams. So, whether we're working with John Blow on The Witness, and so I had a previous relationship with Sean Murray and the Hello Games team from my days at Capcom when they made a game called Joe Danger, which I was a huge fan of back in the day. And that was another one that got away when I was at Capcom. I really wanted to sign that, but they ended up, I think, doing a deal with they do PlayStation or their Xbox. I can't remember where that ended up being. But Sean and I were friendly, and it was a team that I believed in. And when they sort of told us the pitch and showed us some of the stuff, I'm like, that's very, very cool. I think the end result of what occurred in the sort of PR stuff, I think it's a challenging situation because you're trying to talk about what your vision is. And I absolutely agree with you, Greg, that they delivered on it. Right? It wasn't day one. And I think it was a new era of talking about your products and being specific about what's there now and what's going to be there. I think if we look at Cyberpunk 2077, I mean, same thing. They at the gate they had some a little bit of bumps that they hit, but they absolutely crushed it. The game is phenomenal. So I think part of it too is like we need to take a beat and give people a little bit of grace. Sean Murray had not been on stage like Jack Tretton before. It wasn't a seasoned veteran, but he was a really, really smart guy, passionate guy that had an awesome team behind him. So sometimes I think you get in a situation where, maybe there's some advice from PR teams saying like, oh, you should make sure you touch on this and touch on that and touch on this and touch on that. And I think being clear about and consistent about your messaging and positioning is critically important. And I just think they got bit by the internet. I think the internet sometimes swings its tail and wants to take out some. And I think in the games industry, it happens a lot, right? The tail swings broadly and sharply. And so I feel really bad for them during that time because their intentions were sound. They want to make something cool that was different and new and unique. And they did deliver on that. It was not at the speed in which I think some people wanted it. But in the end, they kept their promise. And I think that's the most important part. So I think whatever they're working on next, I'm super excited about because that they're people of the word and are going to deliver on it.
Yeah, I know their next game was announced already, right? I don't remember the name of it, but yeah, I mean, they were the first, probably that not the first, but they got truly bitten by the community of the internet, right? And
Yeah.
they owned it, man, and that's the most you can ask. You don't
Yeah.
run from it. I almost look at Anthem in the same way, where like Anthem launched with crazy hype, like I could be Tony Stark and fly around, and then kind of they just stopped supporting Anthem. Whereas No Man's Sky, that you got that love it, and again, that's I think the difference between a true person that loves gaming making a game versus a corporation coming in and saying, "Hey, this is what the people want. Let's build it."
Well, I think to push back a teeny bit, Greg, I think no one on any team ever wants their game to fail, right?
Yeah.
They wish that they had infinite resources and funds to keep chasing that fun. And if Anthem was built by an independent studio that could self fund that future, I think it'd still be cooking it. Hey,
Mhm.
so it's I think it's challenging because a lot of people are like, oh, that team didn't try hard enough. Every team tries
Yeah.
so hard every day to do their best, but sometimes it's circumstances and not everything's going to land with every player all the time. Being able to predict big hits and know exactly where things are going to, it's like in baseball, we still don't know what people are going to hit. We can't predict but with all our data, we should be able to predict exactly where they're going to hit it and how fast they're going to hit it. We can't, right? Because still there's a lot of RNG involved.
So recently, we have the launch of Tony Hawk 3 and 4, which is from one of your former studios. been playing it every morning now. I'm a big
Awesome.
fan. I love the nostalgia factor. I think Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remake was one of the better remakes. 3 and 4 was fantastic. I know people are complaining about the music, but it is what it is. What games are you playing these days?
That's a great question. I on my Switch 2, I just had a quick trip to Europe and I played Dead Cells again. I went back and I wiped my save file and I started from scratch. And holy mackerel, that game is just phenomenal. I love it. I love it so much with all my heart. The other game that's my sort of go-to comfort game is Astroneer. So I've been playing a lot of that. I just downloaded the Peak, have not had a chance to play that, but me and Johnny V are trying to find some time. And I've been playing a lot of Duke Awakening Dune Awakening. Actually, a crossover between Duke Nukem and Dune would be pretty good.
That'd be
Uh,
fun. There you go. All right.
so that I just love. I'm just playing solo, so I'm I got my ornithopter, my saltthopter, and you know in the deep desert, that's sort of where all the PvP stuff is. So I'm like just kind of like peeking around, looking around, hiding before like a bunch of barrage of rockets. But I'm always curious about new games, new releases that are coming out, and I try to sort of play a lot of different things every week.
How
How
did the
about you,
Switch?
Greg? What are you playing these days
I'm playing Tony
aside from
Hawk
Tony
3
Hawk?
and
Yeah.
4. I just finished The Alters on Xbox.
Okay. Cool. How was it?
Um, Great story. Really
Yeah.
enjoyed the story. I at my older age, I'm enjoying the story-driven aspects of games. I'm not good at fighting. I finished Doom. That was a fighting one.
Yeah.
Didn't love it as much as Eternal, but I thought it was still a really, really well put together. Doom and Mortal Kombat share this kind of quality to me that they jumped to the modern era really well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Doom. I remember playing Doom 2 as one of my first games. Like, I remember enabling clipping on the wall and doing all that stuff, and like seeing it in the 3D environment, seeing how much faster it is. It's just like a holy shit moment every time I play it. Like it really like gets your adrenaline going.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Um,
Yeah, and I've with Tony Hawk 3-4 remastered, I also started playing it, and my hands don't work like they used to. I used
no,
to pull off crazy tricks and just combos and all this stuff, and now I'm just like, nope, I'm pretty trash.
yeah, same thing. My wife wanted to play Crash Bandicoot again. I'm just like, you're gonna have a bad time. Like, it's something about how nimble you are as a kid, where you can make those timings, and now as an adult, like, good luck.
Yeah,
It's always funny to look back at these old games, thinking how easy they're gonna be, and you get your ass handed to you.
absolutely. Especially the old NES games. I was playing Kid Icarus the other day on the retro. I was like, this is horribly hard. I remember it so fondly. It was one of my favorite games. I'm like, this is atrociously hard.
Yeah.
But then you look at the kids playing Roblox games. I'm like, they have no UX. They have no onboarding. Their games are super hard too. So I think it's just like you grow and evolve as a gamer.
Yeah, it is. It's wild. I was talking about this with Alex as well. There's so many games that launch on these platforms that, like, and you mentioned it, discoverability is one of the hardest things. It's like, even on Fortnite, like, I'm trying to find other experiences on Fortnite and I can find them, but then there's like 20 players playing, 30 players playing. I'm just like, there has to be a better way for me to find these games here rather than what I'm trying to do right now. And Minecraft, I don't even know how to get started on it. Like, my son plays it. I'm just trying to keep up with him. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here, right? It's wild.
But I mean, that's one of the parts about that I love about having kids is that going on the curious journey with them. One time they were playing with a bunch of friends, and I was like, "Can I hop on too?" In Minecraft. And so we were playing together, and then one kid started like stealing all their stuff, so they banned them from the server, and just all this fun stuff. And it comes to a point. Even with Fortnite, I would play with my kids quite a bit. And then I remember one time my son comes home. He's like, "Hey, Dad, one of the kids at school wants to play with you. He heard you make games." And so we're playing I think we're playing just box box bash and Fortnite, and this kid just murdered me. And he's like, I thought you made video games, you loser, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm good.
Rage quit.
I have
Just
nothing to prove to these children. So the moment that the kids got better than me, I'm like, I don't
yeah,
need this
that
anymore.
time's coming for me. I'm not looking forward to it. And I'm still better than my son, but I think I got like 6 more months in me, and then he's got it. I'm just like,
Yeah.
but I'm more curious. The Switch 2, man, how did it do on the flight?
Oh my god, loved it, loved it, loved it. Because I'm a bigger guy, and so what I love about it too is that when the table was down, I had a Pro controller in my bag, but what I did is I sort of crossed my arms because like for comfort, and I had the two, and I was like just playing Dead Cells like this, and I also
Perfect.
hooked it in the back paddle on it. It's pretty cool. because what I didn't realize on the flight is like, when you have your table and you got your little switch.
Mm-hmm.
So what it is, I took the back, I put
Oh, it kind
this
of hung.
and I hung it.
Yeah.
And so it hung on the back, on the chair in front of me, and then I had the controllers that were in my hands, just like this, as I was
Mm-hmm.
cross armed. And then you don't have that sense of like I got to hold it out like this the whole time. So and then I plugged it in to charge it, and so I was right as rain and played too much. I wish I slept a little bit more, but
Nah, it's over. You can sleep
it's
now.
worth it. And then people are like, oh, like you hear kids be like, that's the Switch too, which is always super fun.
I know it's I'm both envious and not. It's like I want one, and then I didn't, but now Donkey Kong is out, and just like,
Oh, that game
oh,
looks so
so
good. I've not
I
played it yet,
know,
but it looks so
I
good.
know. So you've been again so many cool places. You dropped off so many names of people you've worked with, and I think networking is something that we all take advantage of. It's something that you're younger in your career, you're like, I'm LinkedIn's new. I'm not going to network with people. But then as you start, at least for myself, when I started getting a little older, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to all these old people, and everyone's super friendly. Sounds like you did a really good job at networking and keeping in touch with some of these people. I'm curious, is that something you picked up right away and a skill you had right away, or something you've learned to kind of teach yourself over time?
That's a great question, Greg. I don't know if it was ever like I should do this. I think part of it was because when I started doing business development. So for the viewers and listeners that don't know, business development is when you're out there trying to find new projects or trying to connect people, or you're either selling or buying a product. Sort of, it's another fancy word, I think, fancy name for sales. But when I started doing business development for Capcom, I didn't know what you were supposed to do. I was never trained in sales. I never, it was not part of my thing. So being a QA tester, I thought that you just finished the game before you met with them. So I would finish people's games before I had the meeting. And I remember that, Greg, being a sort of a formative moment because then people will remember me. And then I was like, of course. And then I played their game, and so when I would meet with them, the game would be fused, and the knowledge of the game and the experience of the game and the feeling of the game would be fused with the people that I met. And so that was a way for me to like remember very deeply a team, because I feel like you really get to know a team. I mean, nowadays sometimes the teams are thousands of people, but back then it was a little bit easier. So over time, it's just checking in with them and then going to a lot of different shows, and yeah, congratulating them on cool things that they're doing or posting. I think especially when Twitter was normal, more normal. Who can ever say any social media is normal? But that was a great place for interacting with people and networking. But shows were always great. And then yeah, just trying to follow up and check in with people. Just be out there. Now I know that's a challenge for a lot of people that are more, I call them indoor cats, right? So I'm more of an outdoor cat. There's a lot of people that are indoor cats, but I think it's about the depth of the connection and making sure you follow up. And one of my best friends of all time, Carter Lipscomb, had this amazing saying, which is be pleasant and be present. And it's just something that I really took to heart. And so I think that, I think friendships and connections are like a garden. And so your job is to, water it and take care of it. And then it will take care of you. And that's like kind of why I feel very strongly, and such a big part of my heart is in this industry, because people have been so kind with their time and their love and affection with me, that I want to give that forward to the next generation.
I love it, and I've heard so many good stories about Carter. I know Sean Layden was on here, and he was saying he had a great relationship with him, and it sounds like he was just a one of a kind people in this industry. So, if you could go back to any one of your previous jobs and kind of relive that experience, which one are you going to go back to?
Ooh, that's a cool question. Um,
Not many people can say they work for such cool companies. So,
well, I think, I mean, the moment when Shu and I tweeted out the sharing video behind the stage at E3, that was like this. We thought it was funny. We didn't know that we would connect with the internet, and that's an example of the internet sort of responding in a way that was more in line with our expectations. That was pretty cool. I mean, the whole PS4 launching, like working with the team that I did at PlayStation to launch the PS4, that team was one in a bajillion. Like I love that team so deeply, and it was such an awesome crew to work with, and to be able to bring the gamers and the players what they wanted. That was awesome. It was definitely a career high.
well, Adam, I love your stories. Your experience is awesome, and everyone should be envious of it. Before we do go today, let us know where we can find you. Where can we find Vivrato?
Yeah, you can go on LinkedIn. You can look up Adam Boys. You can go to www.vivrato.com, Vivrato, and you can hit up our contact at vivrato.com if you have a question or an email you want to send us, any of that stuff. Or sign up, like I said, on LinkedIn for a quick chat and to learn more about what we do, who we are, and stay tuned for the next couple weeks. You're going to see the big announcement of all the new 9 members, which I'm super excited to talk about in the
Awesome.
future.
Awesome. We'll have links to all of Adam's stuff. And Adam, again, thank you so much, man. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the time.
That's just a piece of Adam Boy's story. We have a lot more information on him in the Player Driven blog. So if you aren't following Player Driven, check out playerdriven.io. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts from. And you can also check us out on all the social channels. So if you're not following, we have all different people in the gaming industry, from studio directors to VCs to indies to all different people. So make sure you're following Player Driven and have a good one.